Hello, all you freedom-loving people. The Autopen investigation is heating up. Paramount settled with President Trump regarding the 60-minute interview, and now a sudden change inside the CCP backs up the rumors that Xi Jinping is falling from power. Okay, let's get into it. So the question remains, who exactly was operating the Autopen on behalf of President Joe Biden for the past 4 years? Who was signing the president's name on countless documents that changed America and impacted the lives of the American people? This question is now going to be answered. While Republicans on the House Oversight Committee have started questioning former President Joe Biden's cabinet members about the alleged cover-up of his cognitive decline, Lindy Lee, a former DNC fundraiser and National Finance Committee member, detailed her front row seat to Biden's presidency and the people who pulled the strings behind the scenes. Lee said, Biden is definitely complicit, but there were a lot of people behind him, like puppet masters. Biden's former domestic policy advisor, Neera Tanden, testified for hours before the House Oversight Committee last week. Lee said that Tanden played an intricate role in using the Autopen when Biden was manifestly unqualified and unable to prosecute the duty of the office. Tanden explained in her opening remarks on Tuesday that she was given authority to wield the Autopen. She said that she was responsible for handling the flow of documents to and from the president. And she was authorized to direct Autopen use from October 2021 to May of 2023. So the next question is, who is Neera Tanden? Tanden served as director of the White House Domestic Policy Council in the Biden administration. Before entering the White House, Tanden was at the helm of the Center for American Progress, where she quietly promoted a revolution in the distribution of federal funds. Traditionally, federal funds flowed to state and local governments, where elected officials implemented policies based on local needs. However, under the policy design of far leftists, this model has been systematically dismantled and replaced by a vast distribution network of NGOs. The Biden administration began funneling billions of dollars of taxpayer funds directly to approved nonprofit organizations, mainly of which were highly politically aligned with the Center for American Progress and other progressive institutions. These NGOs have become the new gatekeepers of public funds. They control projects ranging from housing and education to public health, and they are not accountable to voters, only to the bureaucracy. Tanden's role in this process was multiple. As leader of the Center for American Progress, she helped design the policy framework that gave significant control over specific NGOs. As the director of the White House Domestic Policy Council, she took control of the implementation of those policies. Now, testimony further reveals that she even signed the legal documents that launched these programs and funding models through the automated signature machine, the Autopen. Just like a game, she is the one who makes the rules of the game, but she is also a participant and the referee. The problem is that Tanden has never been popularly elected or confirmed by the Senate for a major cabinet position because her radical policy views are considered too extreme even within the Democratic Party. Tanden was initially nominated by Biden to head the Office of Management and Budget, the OMB. The nomination was withdrawn, however, over a lack of congressional support for her and after criticism over some of her past posts on X. And the criticism was from both parties. Leaders from both sides of the political spectrum called out Tanden for personal attacks and statements that she made on social media. Tanden deleted more than 1,000 of her past tweets ahead of her confirmation hearing. Her extreme partisanship is also worrying. Tanden previously described the mission for the Center for American Progress as becoming the central hub of the Trump resistance. Tanden also repeatedly pushed the Russia collusion narrative about President Trump, and she repeatedly hyped the discredited Steele dossier as credible evidence. After her nomination was withdrawn, President Biden tried to find a place for Tandon in his administration, one without the requirement of Senate approval. Tandon then ended up being senior advisor to the president and later White House staff secretary. The good thing is that Tandon stopped overseeing the Autopen use after May of 2023 when she became head of the Domestic Policy Council. Of course, Tandon was not the only one. It's a systemic issue of gradual decay and metamorphosis that's been accumulating. In 2005, Deputy Assistant Attorney General Howard C. Nielsen Jr. of the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel wrote in an opinion that the president does not need to personally perform the physical act of affixing his signature to a bill. Rather, he may sign a bill within the meaning of Article 1, Section 7 by directing a subordinate to affix the president's signature to such a bill, for example, by Autopen. Republicans, however, are not disputing the legality of a president using an Autopen. Rather, they are pushing to conduct thorough interviews to determine whether Biden actually agreed to use the Autopen each time it was used and whether he was even cognitively capable of doing so. The committee has also scheduled interviews with former aides Annie Tomasini and Ashley Williams, and they are actively pursuing others. And Biden's longtime physician, Dr. Kevin O'Connor, is slated to appear for a deposition on July 9th. Today, President Trump's lawsuit against CBS parent company Paramount over edits made to a 60 Minutes interview was settled after Paramount agreed to pay $16 million. Paramount said in a statement that the money would be allocated to President Trump's future presidential library. The money would not be paid to him directly or indirectly. Paramount also said the settlement does not include a statement of apology or regret. Back in October, President Trump sued Paramount for $10 billion over its handling of an interview with then presidential candidate and Vice President Kamala Harris. The lawsuit alleged that Paramount deceptively edited the interview in an attempt to tip the scales in favor of the Democratic Party in the election. The lawsuit also accused CBS of having engaged in partisan and unlawful acts of election and voter interference through malicious, deceptive, and substantial news distortion. Then, President Trump amended his complaint in February. He increased the claim for damages to $20 billion, and he alleged that the actions by CBS and Paramount amounted to false advertising and unfair competition. The amended complaint centered on a CBS interview with Kamala Harris that was conducted by Bill Whitaker and recorded in 2 sessions. According to the lawsuit, CBS first aired a preview on October 6 during Face the Nation, showing Harris responding to a question about Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu incoherently and indecisively. But when the full interview aired on 60 Minutes the next day, it contained approximately 15 minutes of manipulated footage from the interview, interspersed with about 6 minutes of footage related to the topics being addressed. The lawsuit alleged that CBS manipulated the interview for commercial and pecuniary benefit, misleading viewers by altering the content between the preview and the broadcast. CBS previously denied the interview was doctored, and they said that the lawsuit was completely without merit, and they stated that the company would vigorously defend against it. So in January, the company agreed to hand over its full unedited transcript and camera feeds from the interview. But the unedited transcript showed that some of Harris's answers were cut roughly in half, and it also showed her full response to Whitaker's question about Netanyahu. In addition, the unedited transcript clarified that Kamala Harris's complete answer was a combination of 2 clips that were aired. Then, CBS and Paramount asked a judge to dismiss the lawsuit in March, and the case entered mediation in April. Later, Bill Owens, the longtime executive producer of 60 Minutes, resigned on April 22nd. Shortly after Owens resigned, CBS News CEO Wendy McMahon also resigned. The U.S. Department of Education and the University of Pennsylvania, or UPenn, reached a settlement on Tuesday in which UPenn agreed to remove the national record that was set by the male transgender swimmer Leah Thomas at the National Collegiate Athletic Association, the NCAA women's swimming competition, and they apologized to the affected female swimmers. Thomas was the first male student athlete in the nation to compete as a transgender athlete in the NCAA in the role of a female, and he was one of the most recognizable. He switched from men's to women's competition in the 500-yard freestyle event for UPenn in 2022, and he won the Women's Division I championship. However, several female athletes complained that their rights had been violated because the decision of the university and the conference were unfair to female athletes. And after an investigation by the Department of Education, the school was found to have violated the rights of female athletes. UPenn admitted on Tuesday that its decision to allow Thomas to compete in the women's game failed to protect the rights of Native female athletes to compete fairly. And UPenn will review its policy and prohibit transgender males from competing on women's sports teams. Under the settlement agreement, UPenn will rescind Thomas's record in championship, and the original female competitor will be awarded the record in placing. The university will also be required to send a letter apologizing to each of the affected competitors. This settlement is a major shift in the U.S. on the issue of transgender athlete participation to protect the fairness of women's participation. Yesterday, President Trump announced that Israel had agreed to the conditions of a 60-day ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. President Trump wrote on Truth Social, "My representatives had a long and productive meeting with the Israelis today on Gaza. Israel has agreed to the necessary conditions to finalize the 60-day ceasefire, during which time we will work with all parties to end the war. The Qataris and Egyptians, who have worked very hard to help bring peace, will deliver this final proposal. I hope for the good of the Middle East that Hamas takes this deal because it will not get better, it will only get worse." President Trump also urged Hamas to agree to the final proposal. The final proposal will be delivered to Hamas by mediation officials from Qatar and Egypt. The final proposal called for a 60-day ceasefire and for the release of half the hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners and the remains of other Palestinians. Previously, Hamas has said that it is willing to free the remaining hostages to end the war, while Israel says that it can only end if Hamas is disarmed and dismantled, but Hamas has refused to lay down its arms. No representatives for the final proposal were named, but Middle East Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Vice President J.D. Vance met Ron Dermer. Dermer is a senior advisor to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In a social media post, President Trump said that his representatives had a long and productive meeting with Israeli officials about Gaza. Yesterday, during his visit to Florida, President Trump told reporters that he would be very firm with Netanyahu about the need for a speedy Gaza ceasefire, while noting that the Israeli leader wants a ceasefire as well.
How firm are you going to be with Netanyahu about ending the war in Gaza?
Very firm. But he wants it too. I will tell you. He's coming here next week. He wants to end it too. We had a tremendous success with Iran. They won't have me. Somebody said, "When are you going to sign?" I said, "Sign? They are so bombed out." Did you see the report issued this morning? The place was decimated. It'll be years before anybody even gets down there. So that's not a priority, but we'll have a report and we'll have whatever we want. We'll get whatever we want from Iran. And I think, and I hope they want to have a good country. You know, they have massive sanctions right now, biting sanctions. It's going to be very hard for them to do anything with those sanctions. And I look forward to maybe there'll be a time when we get along with them and they can rebuild their country.
Is there a point where you tell Netanyahu, like, you gotta end this now, you gotta strike a deal?
Well, he wants to. I can tell you he wants to, and I think we'll have it. I think we'll have a deal next week. That's what I think.
And President Trump is scheduled to host Netanyahu at the White House on July 7th. And today, Hamas confirmed that it received the final proposal from the mediators. Hamas stated that it's holding talks with them to bridge gaps in order to return to the negotiating table and to try and reach a temporary ceasefire. But they insisted that they are also seeking an agreement that would bring an end to the war. Hamas said that it is aiming for an agreement that would ensure the withdrawal of Israeli forces from the enclave. But shortly after the Hamas statement, Netanyahu said there will be no Hamas in post-war Gaza. Israeli officials have warned that the Israeli military will escalate its operations in Gaza if ceasefire negotiations do not advance soon. Yesterday, July 1st, was the CCP's founding anniversary. The day before, the CCP claimed its members exceeded 100 million. The Wall Street Journal stated that for most Chinese people, being a party member isn't necessarily about ideology, it's a way to secure a better job, typically in the government or a state enterprise. Chinese people call it an iron rice bowl. In China, CCP members will have a higher priority than the general public in gaining access to government departments and state-owned enterprises with stable profitability. Also, being a member of the CCP is a necessary condition for promotion in the government sector. Communist Party members on average earn about 20% more in monthly income than non-members, according to a study published in 2020 by 3 US-based researchers. So, on the other hand, we see people mocking and satirizing the CCP on social media, while at the same time in real life, the cream of the crop in China are trying to join the CCP. The Wall Street Journal stated, "The allure of a steady government paycheck has grown in recent years as China struggles to overcome a property crunch, tepid consumer spending, and high youth unemployment. Job creation in the private sector isn't sufficient to take in the millions of vocational school and college students who graduate each year." According to Hongjong Liu, who is an assistant professor of political studies at Pitzer College in California, civil service offers great job stability and generous benefits, especially compared with jobs in private sectors, and it also confers high social status. Nearly 2.5 million people took China's national civil service exams in December to compete for roughly 39,700 jobs to be filled this year, according to official data. That's 200 people vying for 3 jobs. With such fierce competition, joining the CCP as a member is the best way to enhance your competitiveness in the short term in China. According to the official data issued on Monday, the CCP counted about 21.4 million membership applicants at the end of December, which was up 2.1% from a year earlier. However, the CCP boasts of more than 100 million members already, which is not considered an auspicious number by the Chinese public. This is because the number of CCP members as a percentage of the total population was the same as the number of Soviet communists as a percentage of the population before the collapse of the Soviet Union. So, if we go by the CCP's claim that mainland China has a population of 1.4 billion people, then the number of CCP members as a percentage of the population is 1 in 14, or 7.143%. In 1991, before the collapse of the USSR, the Soviet Union claimed that the number of party members was nearly 20 million. At that time, the Soviet Union had a population of 280 million people, and the percentage was also 1 in 14, or 7.143%, which is surprisingly the same ratio. Some people on social media platforms commented, "Coincidence?" and others hinted it's almost down, meaning the collapse of the Chinese Communist Party. Other people scolded, "Only the triads and a particular party, meaning the CCP, do not allow you to withdraw from it. Once you have joined the CCP as a member, you are not allowed to quit unless you are officially expelled from the CCP." However, in November of 2004, the Epoch Times published a series of editorials entitled "The 9 Commentaries on the Communist Party," which systematically revealed the nature and evils of the CCP. On the same day, the Epoch Times launched the Quit the CCP website. which allows Chinese people to withdraw from the CCP and its affiliated organizations, the Communist Youth League and the Young Pioneers, under pseudonyms or fake names. Since then, more and more Chinese people have been posting statements of withdrawal from the CCP organization on the website. The current total of withdrawals from the CCP is more than 448 million people, which means that 32% of the population have voluntarily withdrawn from the CCP and its affiliates, which far exceeds the total number of party members. The only thing reported about this meeting was that it was to scrutinize the regulations on the work of the Party Central Committee's decision-making and coordinating committees. And this was interpreted as a precursor to Xi Jinping's downfall. So this news does confirm the rumor even further that Xi Jinping is being marginalized. Let me explain why. Since Xi Jinping became the top leader of the CCP in 2012, he has set up a number of leading groups to direct various sectors and departments in order to achieve a high degree of centralization of power. And he himself is the head of all these groups. Therefore, the working principle of all these groups, that is, the coordinating committees, is that Xi Jinping is the only person who decides. So this is what the meeting was about. Xi Jinping, through ruling the country by groups, has hollowed out the standing committee of the Politburo of the CCP as well as the functional departments of the State Council, and he has become the de facto king. So, after more than a decade, the Politburo of the CCP suddenly announced that it would scrutinize the working regulations of these coordinating bodies, which means that the top echelons of the CCP are going to change the decision-making procedures of the past. The Xinhua news agency report also implies that Xi Jinping's previous way of governance was overstepping the bounds of his authority. They were impractical and ineffective and characterized by serious formalism and bureaucracy. The report also emphasizes the need for collective leadership on major tasks, which means that it negates Xi Jinping's modus operandi of making decisions of major issues by himself. So it's obvious that there is a strong anti-Xi Jinping force behind this. As we have analyzed before, the anti-Xi forces are not a unified faction. As a matter of fact, both the extreme leftists and the reformists are against Xi. They also include many centrists. The amendments to the ordinance that were reached at this meeting on the work of the coordinating body were the result of the behind-the-scenes compromises that were reached by the top echelons of the various factions. So now that the parties have reached a compromise, all that remains is to find a suitable opportunity and a way to announce their decision to the public. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember to leave a comment below the video, which is really helping us to be seen all around the world. The more people who watch Front Page, the more freedom-loving people the world will have. And please hit the like button and hit the notification bell after subscribing. And please share this video with your friends and family because everybody deserves to know the truth.